Segris, take the roll.
Trustee Anthony.
Present.
Trustee Foster. Absent. Trustee Graham Hudek. Let the record reflect Clerk Segrist is in attendance. Treasurer Slavens.
Good evening.
Trustee Snyderman.
I'm here.
And Supervisor Williams.
Hello. Call for an adoption to the agenda with 2 revisions. First item to add a presentation by Treasurer Slavens with regards to our investments, and then a second amendment to add an item G16 to review a motion based on the closed session we had this evening.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that the board adopt the agenda with the modification, adding the treasurer's report after payment of the bills, and adding item G16, consider authorizing council to proceed as directed in the matter of Canton Township v. Armeniac.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have one set of minutes to be approved from June 26, 2018. Could I have a motion?
Supervisor, I move that the board adopt the minutes as presented from June 26.
Second. Second.
Those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Now would be the time for citizens' non-agenda item. If you're here to make public comment, yes, sir, Mr. Brochek, you could go first. Now would be the time to make comment. So we'll start at the front of the room, then work our way back. We request that you state your name and address, which is not a requirement, but we prefer it for the records, and then as well, try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Mr. Brochek?
3 minutes? Dang, you make me go fast. All right, good evening. My name is Bill Brochek. I live at 745 Sandalwood Road, Canton, Michigan. What brings me here is June 5th, 6:10 in the morning, your township golf course is mowing the lawn. It woke up my 7th grader who was going to take a 9th grade exam. I was upset, asked him to mow somewhere else. The guy said, no thanks. I can do whatever I want. I can start at 6. I was mad. I called Pat. Pat wasn't available. Pat got right back to me, said, Bill, I'll look into this. Emails me, says, you know, we shouldn't be doing this. 7 o'clock is when we're supposed to start. Great leader, come to my help. So it starts to stall. It looks like it's not going to happen because, you know, there's someone else going on behind the scenes. So I called the police the next day, and I want to file a complaint. I asked for the chief. No, can't get him. I get Mike Steckel. Super nice guy. Mike takes my complaint. His words to me were, those idiots are doing that again. They're mowing. He said the condos were complaining. So I said, Mike, I don't know about that. But he said he'd do a sound reading for me. They do a sound reading for me. Says you guys are out of compliance, this and that. You know, I know I got 3 minutes. I'll make it as quick as possible. So basically on a Thursday, I'm told by him he'll handle it, this or that. Friday, Pat emails me and says, you know, that's not going to happen. You know, I know it's not in his hands. So I get a letter from your township lawyer on Monday. You know, it's pretty lawyered up. I was shocked by it. And the body of it reads, it says, established under Michigan law, the local unit of this government is not subject to requirements of own zoning ordinance. I'm thinking zoning ordinance. You know, we're not talking about a zoning ordinance. We're talking about a noise ordinance. So I'm like, okay. Pat advises me not to lawyer up, which, you know, I thought about it, but I didn't. You know, out of respect for him. And I did talk to an attorney in town. He said, Bill, just go to the township meeting. They're great people. They'll listen to you. And maybe, you know, they'll have a session and vote on this and do what's right. So I, being an inquiring person, I wanted to know what was really out there. So the first thing I look at, and I've got a packet for you guys, it says, you know, from this law journal, it says, when is the government unit exempt from subject or local zoning regulations? I'm like, hell, I want to learn. You know, someone's smarter than me, let's see it. So I start reading on my lunch. So the first thing I read in this publication, I mean, I'm like, wow, maybe I am smarter than your lawyer. It goes on to say the activities deemed in a government function that are entity acted for the government capability are immune from zoning ordinances. But it says, however, if the activity is judged to be proprietary in nature, the entity must comply with the regulations. So right, it says, you're running a business. You have to comply. So that is the government propriety test. The legislative intent also goes on to read that. So I'm like, wow, this is pretty good in my favor. So in her letter to me, she references Mainster versus the Township of West Bloomfield. Well, that's my next thing I'm going to read. So I read that case as well. And right in the thing in that goes on to see, same thing. It says if it's proprietary use, which is profit, that you have to follow the rules. So I'm thinking, wow, you know, I didn't need a lawyer, you know. So right there it says black and white that you have to follow the rules. So that's why I'm here today, and that's what I'm telling you. I don't want to lawyer up. You know, I don't want to have to pay for one. But right there, it clearly states you guys aren't following, you might think you're immune on zoning ordinances. If you want to put a building, you want to rezone property, God bless you, you have the right to. But it says if you're going for proprietary use, which is profit, you have to follow the law. So that's what I'm stating. I've got a packet for every one of you. Pat knows what's going on. I don't know where we go from here. Do I need to get a lawyer, or are you guys going to talk about this in a study session, or?
Thank you for coming in and making the presentation. Please do share the packets.
Yep.
And the only question I have is, the most recent conversation I had with staff was trying to reroute where they've been covering, or times they're cutting, what areas where they
Yeah,
start.
but see, you
Has
say that, but I never got that. I got just, hey, don't lawyer up. Here's a letter from the attorney.
The question I'm asking, is the condition better today than it was, or is it intermittent the same as? From your perspective.
To be honest with you, I bought new windows. I just said, screw it, I'm going to sleep with the windows closed. I moved my son from that side of the house. I can't honestly tell you either way.
But let's take the package, and then what I'll do is sit down with Kristen, go through your notes and the comments, and then see.
Okay. Well, I can tell you, I'm black and white, I'm right.
And what I'll do,
I
Bill.
put my faith in you people to be able to read, and it's,
Right.
so.
So Bill, if you please turn that over, then I'll sit down, talk through it with Kristen, and then give you a shout back with what I learned
Okay.
from the process based
I
on.
appreciate it. Thank you for your time and your
information
service. And
Thank you.
okay. All right.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Any additional public comment? Mr. Miller?
First of all, I want to touch on senior citizens, what happened in the power failure. We were asked to leave there at 8 or 9 o'clock during those 3 or 4 days. I touched base with your leisure service staff. I'd like to know the protocol. If you're going to change the protocol, you have a protocol to pick children up with a van after school and recreation and play ball here or whatever they do, games, so be it. But when senior citizens, 80, 90 years old, are asked to leave, and you have a Red Cross facility in Dearborn Heights, and they are so crippled up they can't drive, and somebody would, for example, would be working afternoon to drop them off a friend at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, you guys have enough nerve, your staff, to ask them to leave at 8 or 10 o'clock when they can't hardly walk in a walker. Okay, that's just this issue with this gentleman that was here, basically. I've had the same problem, basically. Your police department finds more time to come out for barking dogs and sit on the street, been out 10 or 15 times in the last 2 or 3 years, and never found them barking. And they have been in Wichita, Kansas, on a trainer's video camera, and I have a picture of them there. I'm sure I can prove it, but you guys spend more time running after dogs on that. Now, the next question I have before my 3 minutes is up, we've asked for the road to be patched, and it's been out there for years, on Getty's Road by Central Park, the daycare center. It drops 3 inches there, one lane, 6 or 8 foot. That's been going on for 3 or 4 years. They walked away from it and left it, the builder. Secondly, Edison down at Haggerty Road and Palmer Road's got a 6 foot by 6 foot place there they patched for a power line this last year, and the same over at Lily Road. And they need to come back and patch it properly. They have just thrown coal patch in it. They need to finish their job properly. Next thing is, I'd like to know when the potholes are going to be patched from Wayne County, if you can possibly find out. Sheldon Road from Cherry Hill all the way to Ford, and the same way with Lily. They go down there and they patch 4 or 5 holes, they fill them halfway, then they walk away. They come back and do another 100 yards next week. It never gets from 1 mile down the road to the next mile they've done. Now, maybe you guys need to ask Mr. Barone to come over here and he can solve some of these problems. I appreciate your time. I'd like to know the protocol if it's going to be changed on senior citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Is there any additional public comment? Is there any additional public comment? Okay, seeing no additional public comment at this time, call for a motion to payment of the bills.
Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion that we pay the bills.
Good. Those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
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 Thank you. Now we have a brief presentation by Treasurer Slavens regarding township investments.
I passed out, everybody should have a hard copy of the second quarterly investment report. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Really, there's not very much change. And if we could have this in the minutes, I would appreciate it.
Are there any questions for Treasurer Slavens at this time? Okay, if anybody, after review, if you have questions of Treasurer Slavens, please do send her an email to ask your questions directly. Could I please have a motion to accept and file the Treasurer's presentation on our investments?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is presented, please state aye.
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 Julie will get you a copy of the document as well. Very good. Now it's time for a public hearing. We have Mike with us this evening. Let's see, public hearing for approval of the 2018 CDBG program year and annual action plan is our topic here. And I
Mr.
don't-
Supervisor, I move to open the public hearing to hear comment on the Advisory Council recommendations for the fiscal year 2018 Community Development Block Grant Program.
Second.
In summary, the CDBG Advisory Council is submitting its recommendation for projects and project funding for the plan year 2018 CDBG Community Block Grant, Development Block Grant. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, requires an annual action plan to be submitted by August 15, 2018 for each program year. The annual action plan has been available to the public for the past 30 days. The comment period and this meeting represents our second public hearing on this topic. The recommendations provided by the CDBG Advisory Council were formulated following a public hearing on project proposals on June 6, 2018. Council recommendations generally follow the CDBG 5-year consolidated plan, especially with regards to recommendations for human service agencies funding. The human service agencies funded are First Step, Neighborhood Legal Services, Michigan Growth Works, Wayne Metropolitan Community Action Agency, and are all recommended to receive approximately the same allocations as last year. Additional information were in your packages that you had received. Mike is here, if we, Shepard from our finance office, if there are any questions from the board for Mike. He's here to answer any questions. You may have. Anne Marie, please. Mike, could you come to the podium, please?
Public asking first, or are we asked now? Is it the board asking questions now, or is it still public hearing?
We could go through, see if there's any public questions first. Maybe that's a better idea, and then we'll finish up, because we don't want to replicate that. Are there any public questions regarding the CBDG block grants that are going to be approved? Is there anybody in the audience that has any questions or comments regarding them? Okay, seeing none, go right into the board questions and comments. Yes, please, Emery.
Legal services, the neighborhood legal services, what is that?
That is Elder Law. They're based out of Detroit. They have an office in Redford. They provide programs to seniors in Canton that can go on the first Tuesdays of every month for free legal advice, trusts, wills, things of that nature. They kind of specialize in elder abuse, where when you get to a certain age, they're trying to make sure that you're being taken care of and not taken advantage by your children. They also provide services for our senior summit, so they do a lot of things for Canton residents.
Is that 55 and older, or what is that?
No, I don't think it would be limited to 55 and older. I think it would depend on the case. So depends on what you needed and what they could do to help you out.
Then you have some ADA programs here also. Do you have what those are detailed out, or you're just allocating that much money?
Those are in partnership with Leisure Services and our ADA transition plan. So we have a large document, the ADA transition plan, and Brad Sharp and myself try to go through those and take a look and see what we can do each and every year to make sure the township is in compliance with ADA laws.
And the CDBG board had input to this, and they reviewed it.
Yes, correct. The meeting was on a Wednesday afternoon for a few hours, and we had a few public comments. We had all of the agencies in to pitch their projects, and then we had a heated debate on who is going to receive what funding and how much.
Details are in the board packet for what each group, the dollar values that were approved by the council or agreed to by the council.
All right, thank you.
I will just say, I have no questions, but since this is a public hearing, I will just state my approval of the CDGB grants that are brought forward here, including the update to the Canton Human Services facility, It's the 16-year-old building that has a number of nonprofit organizations working out of it, including GrowthWorks. I like to see the update in the security features because they do work with populations that are at risk and they have unique needs. So I think that's fantastic. I was glad to see that.
Very good. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you. So, yeah, just for the public's sake, this is money that we get from the federal government, and what are the restrictions on it?
So with the new administration, we weren't quite sure what funding we were going to receive. At first, we were told that the president was going to cut all entitlement programs altogether, and then we were told it was going to be doubled. So we've been trying to figure out what we were going to do in a quick time frame. Really, the restrictions are that it has to benefit low and moderate income persons. So they have to be at 80% of the average median income, which Canton Township, you're looking at a family of 4 that can't make more than $46,000 a year. So that's who we're benefiting, or we're trying to help.
And how much did we end up getting this cycle?
This year, $323,000.
So about the same that
About
we
the same,
had
yes.
been getting before. And then, so we're using this money for various things that have already been mentioned, including GrowthWorks that Michael mentioned, that service. One of the things always is housing rehabilitation.
Yes.
And so $100,000 will be put aside for that. Is that for projects already in flight, or will people be applying for that money?
That money will be used for our waiting list right now.
Okay, so we already have a waiting list.
And the housing rehab is our homeless prevention program.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Diane.
Question, how many people do you have on the waiting list?
Currently, we have, I would say, 7 to 8 homeowners on the waiting list.
No additional board comments. Call for a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second. Those in favor of the second motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Third motion, please, to adopt.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to adopt the 2018 Annual Action Plan and authorize the submission of the 2018 Annual Action Plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Those in favor of third motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we will go into the consent calendar read as one motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that the board adopt the consent calendar as presented. Item C1, resolution approving the Senior Alliance 2019 Annual Implementation Plan for Aging Services. Item C2, consider appointment of Dennis Robert as Canton Township's Dangerous Building Hearing Officer and member of the Building Board of Appeals. Item C3, consider appointment of James Malinowski to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Support.
In favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
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 Motion carries. Item G1, consider the purchase of a 1949 Ford fire truck.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve the purchase of a 1949 Ford fire truck from Mustafa Al-Khamami for a final price of $2,000.
Support.
In summary, the township is requesting approval to purchase a 1949 fire truck from the current owner, Mustafa Al-Khamami, for a final price of $2,000. The truck is the original Canton Fire Department's first fire truck vehicle. It was acquired by Mr. Robert Boyer in 2004 Mr. Alakami acquired the truck from a land property purchase between himself and Mr. Boyer earlier this year. In talking to Director Meyer and Chief Stockline, I guess maybe I should let you speak for yourself. Well, what are we going to do if we get this thing back? This little piece of Canton history.
We decide they don't make them like they used to, and
I don't think they make them like they used to. That's a fair assessment.
Well, I don't think you want to put this one into service, but actually, I mean, it's more a memory for the township, right? We've used it in some parades in the past when we first had it restored, and the vehicle means a lot to the department. When we lost it to Boyer over some repair costs, we would try to get it back for the last 15 years. We've really been struggling with them to try and turn it over to us. And with this property acquisition, the owner, he calls himself Moose, but said that we could, purchase the vehicle back from him. And so it gives us an opportunity to bring some heritage back into the department. And we'll use it for things like parades or, the open houses in the fall. And then also we can put it out for Liberty Fest and stuff like that. It's going to need a little bit of, love and care, but I think we can get it there.
This will it in some levels become a team building exercise when you got some downtime in the station that the guys can
That's what we're hoping for.
polish it up? Yeah. Good. Wonderful.
Where are you going to house it? Just,
Well, right now, our plan is to have it down at the DPW until we figure out how we can get it into the stations. We currently have an extra vehicle over there waiting for the replacement engine coming. So once we make a little bit of space over there and move a couple trailers around, I think we'll have the area to put it in the station and they can work on it during the day.
No other board questions? Those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item G2. Thank you, Chief. Consider approval of site plan for Canterbury Muse Cooperative Edition.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that the board adopt the following resolution. Whereas the project sponsor has requested approval of the site plan for Canterbury Muse Cooperative Edition on the east side of Haggerty Road, north of Cherry Hill Road, adjacent to the Clark Drain and I-275 freeways. And whereas the Planning Commission reviewed the site plan and made a recommendation to approve the request as it is consistent with the original site plan approval and meets all applicable requirements of the zoning code with the exception of facade material and non-disturb buffer. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Charter Township of Canton, Michigan does hereby approve the site plan for Canterbury Muse Cooperative Edition located tax parcel number listed, subject to any and all applicable state law and local development regulations.
Okay. In terms of a summary, the detailed motion kind of covered everything I was going to say for executive summary. So that being said, we do have representatives from the project with us this evening. Mr. Robert Wakely, who's the architect, Mr. Dino Damari of PPS of Michigan LLC. Does the board have any questions or comments for the project representatives? Yes, go ahead.
So basically, the planning commission voted unanimously because it had already been approved by the zoning board of appeals and they'd already done their due diligence for the drainage, so it went through pretty easily.
Board for you then. Very good. Go ahead, Stephen.
can you explain what this is going to be used for, this additional building?
Good evening. Excuse me. Jeff Rizzo with Fenn and Associates, and we are the surveyors and civil engineers for Dino Demare. This facility we worked on about just over 10 years ago. They did an addition, and they're at the point where they need to expand more to have an addition for various functions. It's about 2,500 square feet, and they also are doing a maintenance garage because there's a need for that as well. Maybe somewhere to put the fire truck. So with that being said, we are here to answer any specific questions you have, architecturally or from a civil engineering site plan standpoint.
I think we're going to let you guys off easy tonight. Those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Consider approval of a split and combination for Supervisor's Plat Number 3, Canton, Michigan, on Michigan Avenue Development.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve the property split and combination for the tax parcels listed for Supervisors Canton Plat Number 3, as shown on the attached surveys dated February 14, 2018.
Okay, and there's a single motion associated here.
That's correct.
Support.
Second, from Diane, thank you. All right, we have project sponsor, Mr. Frank Jarbu, with us this evening. Welcome, sir. The project sponsor is requesting a split and combination to accommodate the proposed Tractor Supply Store and mini storage facility. The new property lines correspond to the zoning classifications that were recently approved. The proposed parcels conform to all dimensional requirements of the respective zoning districts. Any land division involving a platted subdivision must be approved by this body. Are there any board questions? Because I think we've seen your project and very much aware of your project. This is kind of cleaning up the paperwork to allow us to continue to go forward.
It is, Pat. Thank you.
Okay, just some clarifications. I remember this from a month or two ago, but, so is Supervisors the name of the company that, or what?
Plat, it's just a.
That's just the term that's used for?
Yeah, it's just the term that was historically used under the Plat Act.
Okay.
In townships, they were the Supervisor's Plat Number 3, Supervisor's Plat Number 56. It's just the terminology of how they divided up the land many years ago.
Okay. And this is plat number 1 of the whole township, or just in this area?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll get back to you
All
on
right.
that one.
Back in 1834, somebody called it something, and here we are.
And then, I remember the diagrams from last time were much easier to read than these, so I think, Tim, you just had up the diagram, and I just wanted to know specifically which ones we were talking about there, and combining or splitting or whatever.
Yeah, so this one might be something that's just a little bit easier to take a look at. It's got color. The other are basically just survey drawings.
Yeah, those were hard to read.
Right, so the parcels are a combination of a number of parcels that are basically situated in this rectangular block to define the former Livonia Magnetics, now the Tractor Supply Company site, and then the proposed cube storage site that's going to kind of wrap around it. So in essence, it's splitting and combining those properties so that they can develop it in accordance with this site plan.
Okay, that's much easier to understand. Thank you.
No further questions? Those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Item G4. Thank you, Mr. Jarbo.
It's not going.
Oh, we have the second.
All set.
All set, yeah, that's simple. Item G4, well, actually, it's
Yeah.
related, so.
Oh,
it's
right.
nice to
Kinda
hang
like-
with us.
Why he's hanging
In case
out.
there's any questions. Consider approval of the site plan for the Tractor Supply Company.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that the board adopt the following resolution, the approval of the site plan for Tractor Supply Company. Whereas the project sponsor has requested approval of the site plan for Tractor Supply Company located on the south side of Michigan Avenue between Sheldon and Morton Taylor Roads. And whereas the Planning Commission reviewed the site plan and made a recommendation to conditionally approve the request as it is consistent with the special land use approval and design standards for site plan approval. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Charter Township of Canton, Michigan does hereby approve the site plan for Tractor Supply Company on the tax parcels listed, subject to provisions of a final site lighting plan and any and all applicable state and local development regulations.
Thank you, Diane, for support. Again, subject property, existing building, which was housed Livonia Magnetics previously. Tractor Supply Company will utilize a portion of the existing building with the addition to the front and back of the building for a total of 21,077 square feet. The outdoor sales area is another 18,000 square feet. Display of items normally done by Tractor Supply on the front sidewalk will be located in a roofed vestibule attached to the front of the building. The site will share a common driveway from Michigan Avenue and utilize a common stormwater system at the south end of Cube Smart personal storage site. And we are seeing a picture here, diagram of the front elevation. And the vestibule is just a large glass front, so you'll be able to see the product.
So good evening, my name is Frank Jarbo. So that vestibule, originally Tractor Supply likes to have a sidewalk display area where they have their actual product out there, lawnmowers and such. And me and Jeff went round and round with the saying, what's the best way to utilize it to get this thing approved? So we came up with this covered vestibule area. It's going to look a part of the building. You'll walk in, and on both sides, you'll be able to shop the lawnmowers, spreaders, whatever they normally have out there that's on the sidewalk will be in that enclosed vestibule. Then you walk through another set of doors, and that'll be the actual store. So kind of works to their benefit with Michigan's unpredictable weather, that type of thing. So that's where.
Kind of clever, it kind of sounds like a showroom.
Yeah, exactly,
Front end
exactly.
showroom,
So we as the developers had to sell Mr. Goulet on it and also Tractor Supply, and we came up with this idea.
And I've shopped in this chain up north, and I think I've enjoyed shopping there. Is this the first one in this general area? or-
No, I think their closest store around here is Whitmore Lake, I think they
Oh,
have, but
not
they
too
do.
close.
They are coming to more, markets
Area.
like this. They're normally in rural areas. There's 1,700 stores in 49 states. They're planning on probably opening 2,500 stores. We got a project for a couple more, but they really, we pushed them to Canton. We thought it would be a good fit for the community. They're very involved in the community, and I think that it's going to be a great addition.
Go ahead. No? Anne Marie?
Some other, so there were some other items that Jeff had pointed out. Were they all taken care of then? There's a replacement of concrete block, minor corrections to the landscape plan, and we talked about the lighting a little bit, but
Yep, and the lighting plan is attached. It's the last page in this packet.
then the replacement of the painted concrete block, that was already taken care of. And the relocation of the water main loop.
Those were, if you don't mind me asking, those were all answered. Those were the comments that Jeff had to us, so we revised those in the drawings that we presented here. We were late to get the lighting plan from our lighting contractor over, but that's why that's the last thing. But we've addressed all of those issues with Jeff.
What happened with the water main loop?
We couldn't get an easement that we needed, so it just, the way it loops in, and it'll have to loop out the same way. I think engineering wanted that for flow, and it just couldn't happen. We couldn't get the easement that was needed. But it's nothing that's going to jeopardize the.
Yeah, those are details that generally we typically sort out at the next phase of the development, which is the engineering.
Seeing no additional questions or comments, those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
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 Motion carries. I think we can let you go now.
Thank you,
sir.
appreciate it.
Yep. Guys, item G5 is consider approval of the site plan for Uptown Apartments Phase 4.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that the board adopt the following resolution, the approval for the site plan for Uptown Apartments Phase 4. Whereas the project sponsor has requested approval of the site plan for Uptown Apartments Phase 4 on the west side of Denton Road, north of Cherry Hill Road, and whereas the Planning Commission reviewed the site plan and made a recommendation to approve the request as it is consistent with the planned development agreement and meets all applicable requirements of the zoning code. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Charter Township of Canton, Michigan does hereby approve the site plan for Uptown Apartments Phase 4 located on tax parcel listed, subject to any and all applicable state and local development regulations.
Okay, this is another one we've seen a few times. The project sponsor proposes the fourth phase of Uptown Apartments consisting of 8 buildings and 152 units to be located on the west side of Denton, north of Cherry Hill. The buildings are a combination of 2- and 3-story buildings, brick and siding. The elevations of the buildings facing Denton have been modified to include more brick, so it feels like the front of the buildings. And the site plan is consistent with Amendment Number 5 of the Plan Development Agreement, and it just moves us a little bit closer to finishing up Cherry Hill Village. We have with us this evening Mr. Mark Hyland from Beztech Corporation, if there are any questions. Do we have any questions or comments from Mr. Hyland?
Are rentals? Okay. And I noticed mention that there will be no entrance on Denton Road across from the firehouse. Is that right?
The only thing we provide over there, you can see in the upper right corner, that shaded area is grass pavers. So in the event
Emergency
that
vehicles?
there's issues on the main road, you can actually get across the ditch and through the grass pavers to get into the project that way. So it's just emergency access that isn't going to be visible. It'll just be marked by some markers so that they can use it if they need to.
Coordinated that with public safety or planning? How did that come to be?
That started off with planning, just to make sure that there was that alternate entrance, just because it was, you have to come into the site a ways to get into the main ride, and then it loops around. And so since there's only that one road access into the property, they felt it was best to at least provide some additional emergency access.
There were some other exceptions also. Do you know, Tim, if they were looked at? Or would that be the, if you look at the notes, so the inclusion of the architectural plans showing carport locations consistently? That was all.
We received that letter, we had done all the revisions and got it back to planning in time to make it on this agenda. So they've had a chance to review it, and they came back with no comments.
We also had asked about ADA access, and you had said that there would be, the first floor levels would have ADA access, and van accessible spaces allow someone in a wheelchair also. So,
Part of the building code, that all first floor units have to be prepped for accessibility. In other words, they have to have the right width doorways and distances and turn radiuses. And then a certain percentage of those also have to be already made out to be handicap accessible.
advertise them like that, or how does that usually come in, or?
We'll design several of the units to be fully accessible. The rest will be ready to be prepped. Just we'd have to have grab bars and things, but we don't really advertise it. It's on our sign, it's in our websites and things like that, but we don't necessarily just advertise it because it's not required that the units be left open. If it's a first come, first serve rental thing, but we do make sure that we do have units available if someone with a handicap accessibility issue comes in. We have some units that'll satisfy their needs.
Out of curiosity, how many units would you have available for the ADA compliance?
Check with the engineer, it's usually about 2%, so 3.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions or comments, those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Consideration.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement between Wayne County for the construction of the Lower Rouge multi-use trail extension.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement with Wayne County for the purpose of for the proposed Lower Rouge Trail extension.
Second?
In order to construct the next phase of the Lower Trail system, it will be necessary for Township to enter into this IGA with Wayne County. The IGA will allow the Township to construct the proposed phase of the trail, which is located on Wayne County Park property east of I-275 on the Lower Rouge River. And this is the one that does connect us to the city of Wayne, Greg? I believe this will,
That's correct.
gives us their border.
It'll
Border
extend the
connection.
trail from the I-275 connection east over to the city of Wayne.
One where we've gotten grants assistance? to-
Yes, we got a $40,000 grant this year for the engineering portion of it, and then we're working through all the IGA details. That's what this agreement is for, that you have before you tonight, so that in the spring, we would be able to apply for DNR grants and SEBCOG grants. But we need to have the IGA in place prior to applying for those grants.
Questions or comments for Greg? Go ahead, Steve.
Looking at the map, it ends before Hannon Road. Was that the end of Canton proper?
It is, there's quite a substantial grade right here as well. The Hannon Road is probably 30 feet above the grade of where the trail will be down here in the Lower Rouge floodplain. So that's why it ends a little bit short.
What is that, how does that bode for the future of connecting?
Yeah, that's to be determined as Wayne brings the trail westerly, like Greg said, as Wayne brings the trail westerly towards Hannon Road, then we'll figure out with Wayne County how that connection gets made. My suspicion is you would have to come up to grade up above and then cross Hannon Road and then come back down into the, along the river on the east side of Hannon.
Tunnel?
No.
Okay, because I was wondering if it was just as simple as, like, since we have people out there getting Wayne to chip in to make that, but that still sounds a lot more complicated than.
Yeah, their trail isn't there yet. It's a future plan trail.
How far away is their trail?
About a mile and a half. Something like that.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, one more question. Will we put something there? Like, is it just going to be like the road just ends, or will be there a turnaround or something, or something?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
it'll just loop around, probably like a little cul-de-sac type turnaround.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Comments, questions? Those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item G7, consider approval of budget amendment and award purchase order contract to Northwest Consultants, Inc. for engineering, design, and construction bidding services for pavement improvements at the Division of Public Works facility.
This is in the form of two motions. Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve the following budget amendment. Increase expense to the capital outlay buildings and improvements account for $7,080, and an increase in the capital outlay, increase in expense to the capital outlay buildings and improvements for the same amount of money for $7,080, and a decrease in expense the transfer to fund balance account for $14,160.
As we're all aware, we've delayed some repair projects around the community on Canton-owned facilities, just like we've got out front here at this building. This is just one more to be done at the DPW yard. Are there any questions for Tim? Oh, seeing none. Those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Supervisor, I further move to award a purchase order contract to Northwest Consultants Incorporated under the existing master services agreement for an amount not to exceed $14,160.
Second. Those in favor of the second motion as presented, state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item, G8, consider the approval of a F-150 Ford pickup truck and an approved budget amendment for the Public Safety Department.
In the form of two motions, Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve a budget amendment for the replacement of the Ford F-150 as follows: an increase in the expenditures to the capital outlay vehicles account in the amount of $29,553, and a decrease expenditures to the transfer to fund balance in $29,553.
The picture is worth 1,000 words.
Just a scratch.
Scratch now, that's bye-bye. That's total. So, if approved by by the board, Fleet Services will replace the unit with a 2018 Ford F-150 per the Macomb County bid awarded to Signature Ford. Budget amendment in the amount of $29,553 is necessary as the unit was not budgeted for replacement in 2018. Are there any questions for Director Foss? Go ahead.
Yes, I didn't, what happened? Was anybody hurt, or?
No, there was no injuries. That's always my very first question when we have an automobile accident in the township. Let's see, it was a broadside collision that occurred June 27, 2018. Tim, can you?
A driver ran the light and T-boned our driver, so the other driver was found to be at fault. There was a third vehicle involved in the accident also and served as the witness, confirming that the other driver ran through the light. So that other driver was charged. All we can claim is the mini tort under state law, so that's the way no fault works, even with a governmental entity.
Looks like we hit something, though. Looks like the front end.
We hit the other vehicle.
Oh, we hit them, okay.
They hit us.
Right, they hit us.
They hit us, yep.
What intersection was that? Where was that at?
Was at, it's in Westland. It is where Z-Bart is, just maybe about a mile or mile and a half east of our border with the city of Westland. I forget the name of the cross street.
Going to get rust-proofed.
So then I mean, this is none of these vehicles can be covered then by insurance, right? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. Yeah.
Self-funded.
We're stuck.
Yeah, we're self-funded, so we write the check. Like I said, all we can claim is the $500 mini tort under state law, which we do in all cases where we're not found to be guilty.
This is the third vehicle then, really. I mean, if you think about how much in the last 3 years.
I understand where your question's coming from, and the community our size, our insurance costs tend to be very, very low and very, very favorable by being self-funded. So what happens is we pay a heck of a lot less in premiums, but we also then have to be ready to pick up the expense on the backside. Overall, it's been a win-win-win for Canton for an extended period of years. So, but if you want to deep dive into the whole insurances, that could be a study session in and of itself if you wanted.
All right, thanks.
Self-funding insurance is when you have low incidence and low claims is a very good deal. If you go the other side, it could be a very bad deal. Historically, in Canton Township, it's been a very good deal for us. Mhm. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, those in favor of the first motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Second motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve the purchase of one 2017 Ford F-150 from Signature Ford, 3942 West Lansing Road, Perry, Michigan, 48872 via Macomb County bid in the amount of $29,553.
Second.
In favor of the second motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Very good. Item G9. Let's see, am I in the right spot here? G9. Consider approval of budget amendment award for purchase order of a contract to Signature Ford for the purchase of a Ford F-450 Super Cab utility truck and award of a purchase order contract to Napahide Truck Equipment for the utility body.
Mr. Supervisor, this is a first. We have three motions. I move to approve the following budget amendment. Increase in expense to the capital outlay vehicles account for $77,278 and a decrease in expense to the transfer to fund balance account for $77,278.
Our Public Works staff operates and maintains the township's 460 miles of water main, multiple fire hydrants, valves, and other appurtenances. In order to provide the necessary level of service, several trucks and other vehicles are necessary. Our 2009 Ford F-150 utility truck has reached its serviceable life and is due for replacement. The truck is being purchased using the Macomb County Cooperative Purchasing Contract. This contract was competitively bid, and pricing extends through December 31st, 2018. The cost of the purchase is $46,965 with the options as specified. The utility body to be installed on the truck was quoted by Napahide Truck Equipment at $30,312.82. The total cost of the truck and body is thus be $77,278. A budget amendment is necessary, noting that this expense was accounted for in the 2018 water and sewer rates adopted by the board. Are there any board questions or comments for Tim? Anne Marie?
Oh, it's going to be auctioned off, and then we would credit, the 2009 is getting auctioned off, and that would be credited back to our budget then for future vehicles.
Correct.
In favor of the first motion as presented, please state aye.
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 Second motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I further move to award a purchase order contract to Signature Ford for an amount not to exceed $46,965 for the purchase of a 2019 Ford F-450 Super Cab utility truck using the Macomb County Cooperative Contract.
Good. Those in favor of the second motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye. Finally, Mr. Supervisor, I move to award a purchase order contract to Nafeed Truck Equipment of Flint, Michigan for the purchase of the utility body for an amount not to exceed $30,312.82.
Second.
For the third motion, as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item G10, consider approval of agreement for digital media and audio-visual services.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve the agreement for digital media and audio-visual services at Canton Township facilities with Pro Video Services Incorporated at 26471 South Point Road, Perrysburg, Ohio, 43551 for a 3-year period with the option to renew.
Township currently owns over $1 million in digital media and audiovisual equipment throughout our 5 facilities. Over time, this equipment requires repairs, upgrades, and replacement. In May 2018, a request for proposal was issued to seek a vendor to inspect, test, and repair our audiovisual equipment at township facilities on an as-needed basis. Only one proposal was received, Pro Video Systems from Perrysburg, Ohio. Due to the Pro Video being the sole applicant to this proposal and meeting all the requirements with a history of providing excellent service and obtaining a number of competitive bids for township projects in the past, staff is recommending to enter into a 3-year agreement with Pro Video. Are there any board questions or comments for Greg? Okay, seeing none, those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
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 Good, motion carries. Item G11, consider approval of an intergovernmental agreement between Wayne County and Canton Township for improvements to Heritage Park.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to authorize yourself, the supervisor, to sign the intergovernmental agreement between Wayne County and Canton Township for improvements to Heritage Park, and to authorize the Finance Department to make necessary budget adjustments to the 2019 budget to record the Wayne County contribution and the related expenditures.
Support.
Wayne County Parks millage was approved by voters in 2002 and renewed in 2009 and 2016 for 7 more years. As a provision of this millage, Wayne County Parks has agreed to reinvest back 15% back into the local community, meaning 85 cents on the dollar leaves Canton, 15 cents on the dollar comes back to Canton. Annually, communities submit project proposals based on the allocated funds from the county. Canton submitted for improvements to Heritage Park the amount of $121,522. The breakdown is in your board packet for safety netting, irrigation system improvements, and fencing. Are there any questions for? Yes, go ahead, Steve.
The 15%, was that something added new in the last ballot question, do you remember?
I don't believe it was on the ballot question. I think it was just something out that the local communities were able to work out with
Oh, okay.
Wayne County.
Interesting that it says maximum, not minimum, 15%. So I'm interested, I wonder how much they actually are giving back in the last 2 years to
Right
local
about that
communities.
15%.
Is it? Oh,
Yes.
good. Okay, near.
We submit the grants and we
Okay.
try to achieve our full value when we get there.
Now, admittedly, this goes to county parks, which our citizens get to go to as well, right? So, but I wasn't sure if that was, and that was, that's nice at least that we were able to negotiate that as communities and can use this money, so that's great.
Or Supervisor LaJoy was instrumental in getting that
Oh, good.
piece negotiated.
Comments? Seeing none, those in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Item G12. Consider approving the purchase of air lifting bags.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve the purchase of a Paratech airlift bag system from Apollo Fire Equipment in the amount of $22,100, utilizing funds budgeted in the 2018 Fire Capital Machinery and Equipment account.
In June, the township solicited an invitation to bid for a replacement airlift bag system. The fire department budgeted for the system to replace the 20-plus-year-old set of bags currently being used by the firefighters. Airlifting bags are a critical rescue tool used to lift heavy vehicles and equipment during crashes and other emergency situations that usually involve trapped individuals. One bid was received by the township from Apollo Fire Equipment in the amount of $22,100. The fire department has budgeted $25,000 for the replacement of the airlifting system, and now are requesting your approval to acquire a new set. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, those in favor, oh, go ahead, Chris, please. Okay.
Background there, you see that I had put in there National Fire Prevention Association, NFPA standard. That standard is 1937, and it's not in effect at this point, but it will be in effect shortly. But I did look up manufacturer's recommendations, and they're recommending 7 to 10 years replacement on it. So we're well over the manufacturer's recommendation on it, just to clarify that. So.
Those in favor of the motion as presented with the updated information that says we should have replaced it 13 years ago, say aye.
Aye.
Much. Item G13, consider sale of Canton property and authorize myself to sign all the documents necessary to close on the sale.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that Canton accept the letter of intent from Gumecindo Pineda and authorize yourself, Supervisor Williams, to sign the formal purchase agreement and any other documents necessary to complete the sale of the parcel located east of Willard Street to the west of the ITC corridor.
I think we reviewed these properties back when we met with our strategy planning session, reviewing different Canton Township properties. Originally, there was some reservation to lay back, but after we took a harder look at it, I think the board was pretty comfortable with. I think that's a fair assessment. Do we have any questions?
Or a comment?
Yes, please.
So, and these questions have been answered for me, so that's great that we're only selling property that's to the property owners, not that's behind their property, not behind someone else's property. So it sort of keeps it contiguous. And the other thing is this does back up to the ITC trail, but the trail itself still has a pretty dense level of trees between the trail and these properties that you will never, the people on the trail will never see anything that these people do with the extra land. So I was comfortable with that.
No additional comments or questions? Those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item G, that's one motion, correct?
Correct.
Good. Item G14. Very similar. Is this, yes. Consider sale of Canton property and authorize myself to sign all the documents necessary to close on the sale.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that Canton accept the letter of intent from Peter Stanek and authorize yourself, Supervisor Williams, to sign the formal purchase agreement and any other documents necessary to complete the sale of the parcels located east of Willard Street and to the west of the ITC corridor.
Very good. Same story, adjacent neighbor, property directly behind. So any questions or comments? Okay,
Yeah,
so-
I'll just jump on, just real quick. I had met with Gume, the previous one, before, just walked in the backyard, talked to him about his intentions, because initially I was concerned about making sure that it was wooded near the ITC trail. What you've got is the abandoned, the right-of-way, right? So you've got the Morton, what would have been Morton Taylor, it was never developed through there, right-of-way, and that is cleared, and service vehicles do go up and down there. So what you've essentially got is people's homes, these parcels of property we had acquired from the DNR for like $200 a piece decades ago. And then you've got the cleared right-of-way, which doesn't have a street. Then you have an additional forest, then the ITC trail, at which point we said, okay, these residents want to purchase these properties so that nobody else can purchase them behind them. And I thought that was a reasonable thing to do. So I agree. It doesn't disrupt the beautiful nature trail, and it helps give some of these homeowners a little bit of additional security.
Seeing no other comments or questions, those in favor of the motion as presented, state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item G15, reading of addition of Chapter 2, Article 5 to the Canton Township Code of Ordinances entitled Code of Ethics, Sections 2-225 through 2-251.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to introduce and hold the first reading establishing Canton Township Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Article 5, entitled Code of Ethics, Section 2-225 through 2-251.
Good. Clerk Segrist, along with trustees Hudak and Anthony, worked diligently behind the scenes to draft this ordinance. I don't know, Michael, do you want to add anything else in terms of evolution and getting to this point?
Yeah, sure. We had held a first reading and we're intending to hold a second reading. Some of the employee bargaining units had some questions about some of the language. We met with two of those units, went over some of their concerns, and decided we would be willing to change some of the language around. There was if you look, you have two versions in your packet, and there's a copy in the board packet back there, and it's also available online. You'll see a final version, which is the clean final copy, then you see the redlined version, and that has everything that was added from the first read that we've already seen to today. We basically added the word intentionally violated, just to ensure that we are trying to find bad actors and not people who are making mistakes. We put a $20 value, so promotional material that's less than $20 is not considered a gift. So if somebody were to get like a pen or a cup, you know, we didn't want to be handling frivolous situations. We also added some language to about conflict of interest, right, so that people could participate in collective bargaining agreements. That was just some language that they wanted to have added. And then the remaining red line changes are at the back, where we just we added a protection for frivolous complaints, right, so that this policy can't be used to harass people, so that you can't bring unwarranted complaints against people. So there is a $250 fine if somebody were to use this policy to harass somebody. And there is some other language just giving the guidance to the Board of Ethics when to relinquish something if it would go into a criminal investigation with an outside body. That would help the Board of Ethics know when to discontinue working on something. But that's the nature of the changes. They reviewed it. I got their okay. I'm bringing it back before this body so that we could hold a first read. If the board is so inclined, then we would do a second read at the August 2nd meeting. I'm sorry, the August 14th meeting, and then it would be published and effective August 23rd.
Is there an opportunity to make an edit to this document between now and the second reading?
Not a substantive edit, which is why we had to implement a first read. So we have, text edits have been done where there's a typo, but when a substantive change occurs.
So the proper course of action now would be allow the first reading, allow the second reading, and then have an actual RBA issue, or if we want to make an amendment in the future, 6 months out, 7 months out.
Yeah, keep in mind, we have written into the ordinance that it will be reviewed annually with the Ethics Commission. So ideally, we would have an ongoing discussion, and if there are areas that are deemed to be excessive, areas that need more strengthening, we could have that discussion in an open meeting and propose amendments to future ordinances.
And I'm just telegraphing out loud what I was thinking was, based on a conversation that we had earlier today, is perhaps language, not today and not necessarily even after the second reading, but in the future, to the effect that if there's a gray area, because you guys tried to cover a lot of ground here, but if there was a gray area, what I'd like to do is have the ability to have one of the electeds reach out to the fellow elected and say, hey, this is a gray area, what do you think? May I or may I not do whatever it is it may be? Just to get board approval before jumping off, or at least have a discussion. Because again, you guys have covered a lot of ground here, but you have to be open-minded because you can't cover everything. So we'll see. Go ahead, Steve.
I just want to thank the three of you for the work you put into it. I think it's a great first step on this, updating this document or creating it versus what we had before. And just the fact that we all commissioned you to do it is a good step for us as a board. And, you know, it's, as you said, a living document that we'll look at every year. And if things come up that we can't handle under its current form, we'll modify it and change it. So I think it's a good process for us to have.
This is an ordinance before we had a policy.
Yep.
So, big step, and certainly Mike takes the lead role in putting together samples from other municipalities, and we kind of worked it and reworked it and back and forth, and I think it's good. I like it, and like I said, it's there, it's now, it's something that we can live with, but it's not written in stone that it can't be changed depending on future developments.
And I can tell you just from our first read that Corinne Conley, the HR manager, has been contacted by other municipalities who have asked to see copies of our ordinance. So there are other people watching what we're doing and trying to replicate it.
It's great that the employees had, the directors and the employees had a lot of input also.
Definitely a collaborative process, which is why it's taken as long as it has.
Government.
Those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item G16 is to address a topic of our closed session this evening.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that the board, I move to authorize the council for Canton Township to proceed as directed in the matter of Canton Township v. Armeniac.
Thank you.
In favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. That concludes our formal business in terms of the agenda this evening. Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? None? Any board comment or staff comments?
We have this Saturday, correct, is our last forum for the roads. So, and what time was that, Michael? 10 to 2, okay.
The two, at the summit, the Chestnut Room, one of the banquet rooms, 10 to 2. I won't be there, but these fine folks will.
Okay.
I have a request just for anybody who might be watching at home, who has one of the 8,400 absentee ballots out right now. We've only gotten about 4,000 of those back, and for the sake of myself and my staff's sanity, as soon as you can get those ballots back in, the better, because we're gonna have to process those. We've got about just under 2 weeks left for this election, so we've got a lot of ballots out there. We love the participation. We're excited about it. Just study up and don't forget to return those ballots.
Very good. Greg, Tim, Chris, Mike? Nope. I'll call for a motion to close.
So moved.
Those in favor of going home tonight, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. We are closed. Thank you.